Hello and good evening. I'm Nora Atkinson. I am the Fleur and Charles Bressler Curator in charge of the Renwick Gallery, and I'd like to welcome you all, those joining us in person and virtually, to the Smithsonian American Art Museum for this evening's conversation with Neptune and Lily Hope, who are two of the artists featured in our current exhibition across town at the Renwick, Sharing Honors and Burdens, the Renwick Invitational 2023, and that show is on view until March 31st, if you'd like to go over and take a look at that. I love both these artists. I know it's going to be a fascinating discussion, and many of you will probably have some questions. I want to let you all know that if you do have questions, there will be time at the end of the program for a Q&A. How this is going to work is for those of you joining us in person, there's a comment card inside your program, so please use that to write down your questions, and those will be picked up at the end of the lecture and brought up to ask the questions. For those of you joining online, if you are subscribed to our YouTube channel, you can use the comments section there to ask your questions at the end of the program. If you have not done so already, please silence your cell phones now. Before we get started this evening, I'd like to gratefully acknowledge the diverse and vibrant Native communities who make their home here, the Native peoples on whose ancestral homelands we are gathered, and the labor of people who were enslaved in constructing this historic building. And with that, let me turn it over to our moderator for this evening, Dare Turner, to present our artists. Welcome, Dare.
Hey everybody, thanks so much for coming out tonight. My name is Dare Turner. I'm a member of the Yurok Tribe of California, and I'm a curator at the Brooklyn Museum, where I care for our indigenous art. And I'm so happy to introduce Lily. I'll introduce Geo before their slide deck, but Lily is up first. Lily Hope is Tlingit and was born in Juneau, Alaska, and currently resides in Douglas, Alaska. She is of the Raven moiety, belonging to her grandmother's clan, Dukdainton. She learned Raven's tail weaving from her mother, Master Weaver Clarissa Rizal, who actually has a work here tonight, here in the audience, and the artist Kay Field Parker. She apprenticed for over a decade in Chilkat weaving with her mother, who, until her untimely passing in 2016, was one of the last living apprentices of the late master Chilkat weaver, Jenny Clonut. Lily endeavors to leave honorable weavers in her place. She is one of the few living designers of ceremonial dancing blankets, flowing garments created and worn by northern Northwest Coast Alaska Native peoples. Her contemporary work in textile and paper collage weaves together Raven's tail and Chilkat designs. She teaches both finger twine styles in the Yukon Territory, Southeast Alaska, Washington State, and Oregon. She demonstrates internationally and offers lectures on the spiritual commitments of being a weaver. She also teaches career development for the artist, supporting and encouraging artists to thrive and live well. Hope constantly looks for ways to collaborate with other artists, often spearheading multi-community projects or managing huge campaigns like the Giving Strength robe for Aware, a domestic violence shelter, and the Pride robe woven with LGBTQIA+ youth at Zach Gordon Youth Center in Juneau. Her work can be found in numerous museum collections, including the Portland Art Museum, Houston Museum of Natural Science, Museum of Man and Nature in Germany, the Eiteljorg Museum in Indianapolis, Berg Museum of Natural History and Culture, and the Sealaska Heritage Institute. So with that, welcome, Lily. I hope you're back in the room. Are you back? I don't think she's here. Okay, there we go. Okay, there we are.
Whew. Okay, we're okay volume-wise? Okay, cool. Let's see, did I do this right? We did this. Aw, Wishkindain da at yochet doasak, yet nachasati, dakdain tan ayachet. My Tlingit name is Wishkindain da at. It means many people traveling together in an upward trajectory. Like follow the leader, but I may or may not be the leader necessarily. I am Tlingit, living and working in Juneau, Alaska. I've been an artist for more than a decade, maybe 15 years, making and teaching my art forms, and just in the last couple of months took on a professorship at the University of Alaska Southeast, so doing more of the same but giving people university credit for learning regalia arts. I'm also a mother of 5 children, ages 6 to 16, with quite a few in between. And you can follow me on Instagram at Lily Hope Weaver when you have internet again. I'm here physically and artistically. Physically and artistically because of my late mother, Clarissa Rizal, formerly known as Clarissa Hudson, who led me to this work. She wove, I think, 11 chilkat or raven's tail dancing blankets and constructed nearly 60 button wool robes, one of which is in the audience today, which I cried about earlier. When she passed in 2016, I was only halfway finished with my first chilkat dancing blanket. She won the National Endowment for the Arts Heritage Fellowship Award that same year, right before she passed. And yeah, this is the photo from that, so thanks to Tom Pitch for this. For the last 100 years, only a handful of artists wove chilkat dancing blankets. In 1985, my mother's mentor, Jenny Clenot, taught a cohort of women outside of her family lineage for the first time. The following year, my mother was the only one who apprenticed with Jenny for 6 weeks and was credited as the only apprentice to complete a project with her start to finish. This is the project. Jenny wove one side, Clarissa wove the other. So she was credited with retaining the spiritual and technical knowledge to complete chilkat dancing robes. And we say the last master weaver, Jenny Clenot, but we say she was really the last Alaskan or United States artist who was practicing this. There were Canadian chilkat weavers at the same time. About a month after my mother finished this apprenticeship with Jenny, Jenny died. My primary work is weaving in this chilkat tradition, the complex finger twining technique originating on the northwest coast of Alaska and Canada. Chilkat dancing robes document history, clan identity, stories, and dreams for Native people. They are twined like danceable baskets, weaving over 2 warps with 3-strand braids, creating the illusion of painted lines. So you can see some of that braid action happening in this picture. Chilkat textiles are visually recognizable by bold black and yellow borders, perfect circles, utilizing adapted form line designs. The form line is from the Northwest Coast. These designs come in black and yellow, blue, and white for chilkat blankets. This is my most recent one, or almost most recent. This one lives in the Houston Museum of Natural Science, and it was over 2,500 hours in the weaving alone, with another, 300 or 400 hours of collecting fiber and cedar, processing cedar, and spinning those fibers together on the leg. Each robe, so far, these full-size, 6-foot ones, they've all taken me 2.5 years to complete. So this is the third of my full-size chilkat robes. And if you want to do the math on 2,500 hours, it is more than a year at 40 hours a week, not including the material preparation. Early in the pandemic, I wove this chilkat protector mask in response to First American Art Magazine's call for masks made by First Nations peoples. This work records history similar to how our chilkat dancing robes do. These masks assert that we were here, we took care of each other, and we survived. This mask ended up with the Burke Museum in Seattle, and I thought I might weave 3 or 4 of them. I might have wove 37. I didn't mean to. But I also taught almost 75 people to weave them as well. Of course, not to be worn as COVID-19 protectors, but as fine art pieces. 17 of these masks are now touring with the exhibition titled Protection, Adaptation, and Resistance, which is currently at Tulsa Living Arts in Oklahoma, and opening soon at Museum of International Folk Art Santa Fe, December 3rd, and running through April of next year. Before closing their grand tour, this has been traveling for about 2 years, it'll close at the Alaska State Museum in Juneau next summer, or do one run through the summer in my hometown. A large part of my income prior to being a professor is teaching nearly every Sunday afternoon on Zoom and making unlisted YouTube content for my patrons on Patreon. I made 467 videos to teach my Patreon members how to weave child-sized Chilkat blankets. My executive assistant and I then raised over $100,000 from various foundations to fly 19 artists to Juneau for a 2-week finishing workshop where we wove 6 hours a day together, snacking and drinking coffee and just giggling and laughing and crying a lot. And then another 6 to 8 hours in Airbnbs, often 2 or more weavers working together on the same robe. Making art is my happy place. Making art collaboratively is my extra happy place. The finishing workshop culminated in a first dance event, which was live streamed and recorded on Sea Alaska Heritage Institute's YouTube channel, with kinder and first graders helping our robes take their first steps. Nearly 4,000 people have watched this short film since February of this year. There is nothing like spending 500 hours on something and then witnessing these little beings come to life on little peoples. And the energy that was in the room while these were dancing was just really emotional, powerful. And you could tell that our ancestors were in the room with us and smiling. We mounted an art show 2 days later. I don't recommend this. Dancing pieces and then putting them in museums. The show was called For Our Children, Chilkat Regalia Woven in the Lineage of Jenny Clinot and Clarissa Rizal, with over 29,000 people visiting that show in the summer of 2023 at the Juneau Douglas City Museum. So pretty amazing that we have so many people learning about Chilkat weaving as they come to visit Alaska, and super proud of my students for their dedication. For the first time now, in over 150 years, more than 24 artists retain the spiritual and technical knowledge to weave adult-sized Chilkat dancing robes. For our clans, for our identities, for the well-being of our communities, for our dreams to live generations into the future. Gunas Chish, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Lily. That was so moving. And I'm really excited now to introduce Geo Neptune, who is Passamaquoddy, and their mother is a member of the Snowy Owl clan. They were born in Indian Township, Maine, and currently reside in Princeton, Maine. They have been weaving baskets since the age of 4 when they began taking lessons from their grandmother, master basket maker Molly Neptune. This mentorship, combined with their prodigious skill, helped Geo quickly master the art form and develop their own personal style. At just 11 years old, Geo began teaching with the Maine Indian Basket Makers Alliance. By age 20, they had earned the title of Master Basket Maker, making them the youngest person to date to receive that honor. Using ash and sweetgrass that they prepare themselves, Neptune weaves vibrant narratives that combine Wabanaki teachings with their own perspectives. In addition to being a skilled basket maker, Neptune is an activist, educator, model, drag performer, and public servant. In September 2020, they were elected to the local school board, becoming the first openly transgender elected official and the first two-spirit person to run for any office in Maine. They used this position to advocate for increased inclusion of Passamaquoddy language and culture in public curriculums until resigning in protest in 2022. Neptune has been featured in the Netflix series Getting Curious with Jonathan Van Ness, as well as numerous prominent magazines, including Them in 2020 and Vogue in 2022. In 2021, Neptune was awarded the United States Artist Fellowship for basket making. Their work can be found in the collections, in several museum collections, including Bowdoin College Museum of Art and the Smithsonian's National Museum of the American Indian. Welcome, Gio.
Kwe. Ndaliwas niska bizuin. Wabi kuko kazwok tona bamok. Jiplagan dodam. Ejipalita hazieli baskanamukar naga nizini wasquanno. Naga ejipalita hazieli mejada basquan medeoin. Naga mamisi nil. Good evening, everyone. My name is Nizga Bizuin, which translates to two medicine spirits standing together as one person. I come from the Palakspira people, the Beskarmukadiik, and the village of Madakmiguk, and I come from the Snowy Owl family clan, as well as the Eel family clan. And as my friend Dare already let you know, I am here today because of my grandmother, Molly Neptune Parker. My grandmother was not just my grandmother, she was my best friend. We had a very close bond throughout my entire life, and we still very much do. I always wanted to learn from her when I was a little kid. She said I started asking her to teach me how to make baskets pretty much as soon as I could formulate that sentence. And she would always tell me that I would have to wait until I was older, which at 3 years old, which was the most infuriating thing you could tell me. Yeah, because my very strong opinions didn't just start as an adult. I carried them all the way through childhood as well. So she said I had to wait until I was older, and I very much disagreed. And when I made my way to the summer camp program on the school on the reservation, because I was allowed to go, it was my first time on a school bus, and I was shocked to discover that there were actually seats on the school bus. I thought everybody was standing in between those barriers and had to just balance the whole time. So I was very relieved. But I talked my way into a basket class that was intended for middle school students, like 6th grade through 8th grade. And I lied to them and told them my grandmother already taught me how. Apparently it worked, because they let me into the class, and that day I went home from summer camp, and my grandmother said, well, I would normally announce my arrival and ask where she was and come into the living room all excited. I got off the bus. I opened the door silently. I closed the door. She heard the bus pull away. I walked in. I made eye contact. And I set my first basket down on the table. And then I turned around and went outside to play with my cousins. A few months later, she finally caved and taught me how to make my first basket with her just after my 5th birthday. And the basket on the left is the basket that I made without her. And you can already see how good of a teacher she was based on the difference between my first and second baskets. The basket on the right is the one that we made together. She said it was the longest day of her life because there was no reason for it to take 8 hours for me to weave a candy basket. But every time she tried to do something for me, I would rip it out, because I didn't want her to make me a basket. I wanted to learn how to make a basket. I also waited for her to leave to complete the final step, because even though it was a beautiful red basket with a white handle, it just wasn't Geo enough. So I found all of the crayons in her house, which were only Rose Art crayons, because I couldn't get her to spend the extra money for Crayola. And I was very upset about that. But I waited for her to leave, and I grabbed the crayons, and while she was at the store, I put all of those designs on the handle part, and she was so upset with me. She was like, "You ruined your first basket." I was like, "I highly disagree. It's much more geo this way." Our artistic differences continued throughout our careers together as master and apprentice. My grandmother's strawberry is on the left, and when I started making strawberries, I actually made my very first strawberry right here in Washington, D.C. at the Smithsonian Folklife Festival. And the first one I made was all white. I didn't put any dye on it, so it was an unripe strawberry. And from there, I would only make white strawberries because my grandmother made the red ones. And I started shrinking my strawberries down and adding a green spot for the spot that doesn't get hit by the sun quite as often, so that the berry was still ripening with the imagery that I'm still the growing berry and my grandmother is the fully ripe berry. And for Eastern Wabanaki people, traditionally strawberry baskets were used to store children's umbilical cords after they were born, and they would go into their bundles because the wild strawberries will grow with a runner vine and then make more strawberries, and so that represents your connection to your mother and your grandmother through your umbilical cord. So she was always the ripe strawberry, and I was the growing strawberry, and I didn't make a fully red strawberry until after she passed in 2020. And that first red berry will not ever be for sale, but it is on display right now in the Renwick Gallery. My berries expanded. I started making what I called extraordinaries. There is also my piece, which I titled Biascamun, gaze, G-A-I-Z-E, because the Passamaquoddy word for corn is biescamun, so biascamun. I was so afraid to make that basket. I had a big part in my career where I was afraid to make the baskets that were in my head because I didn't think they would sell. It was too big of a risk. And if I put too much of myself into my art, I was worried, like, if I made my art too queer, people wouldn't want to buy it. And at some point, a shift happened, and I said, well, if somebody doesn't want to buy my art because I'm queer, then I don't want them to buy my art anyway. And so I was very afraid to make this incredibly phallic, incredibly gay basket. And it ended up being one of my most popular sellers. It still is. I kept raising the price because I didn't want to make anymore. It did not stop people from buying them, so now I just say they're not available. I've also challenged myself by trying to see how small I can make the berries. This basket this was no more than 2 inches tall, not including the braided stem. I also challenged myself to make a 5-petaled flower for this basket because normally you can only have even number of petals. So that was a little challenge for me. And I always want to make them so that they are functional baskets. You can actually open them, unless I get bored or have to finish it and don't put lids on them. So if you see a berry without a lid, Gio just didn't finish it. So don't look too closely at the shoes in the exhibit. These were some of the baskets that I made right after I decided to be a basket maker full time. I had every intention to move to New York City after college to pursue my dream of being a theater actor, being on Broadway. And I had an uncle who told me, I know you want to be a famous artist, famous actor, and I'm sure you could do it, but you're already a famous basket maker, and you would be stupid not to focus on that right now. So I did. And I'm glad I did, because now I'm here today. And these were some of my baskets where I was taking just really simple, traditional Passamaquoddy forms and either changing the size, altering the colors. Now I have a tendency to either completely color a basket or it will be completely natural. There's not really much in between when it comes to my styles. There was a very brief point, actually, while I was here for Smithsonian Folklife, where I wouldn't use any dyes. I got over that pretty quickly, though. This was a sewing kit. It was based on a traditional Wabanaki sewing kit that would usually be made in all sweetgrass, but I was always fascinated by Dene baskets from the Southwest and how they could get zigzags in their baskets and how ours were either vertical stripes or horizontal stripes. So I experimented, and I taught myself what I called the lightning weave. And it's slightly different from the way my people have done other zigzag weaves that I've found. They usually do it with just the ash, but I haven't quite found any historic examples of our baskets that this weave came from. So I'm like, I think I kind of came up with it like a little bit. Nope. I'm just clicking buttons, I don't know which ones work. This is another version of the sweetgrass flat basket, the sewing basket, but this one I did with cedar bark. This is full cedar bark. I had a friend who is a cedar bark weaver from Alaska who taught me verbally. She was like, well, you know how to get bark from a tree. Yeah. She was like, you're just going to split it the same way you split ash. And I was like, you just changed my whole life. So as far as I know, right now I'm the only Wabanaki basket maker that actually knows how to harvest cedar bark and prepare it for baskets, whereas all the other basket makers get it from their weaving friends. This piece I made, this was a memoriam piece in memory of the queer people that lost their lives in the Pulse Orlando massacre. And this was also, this won Best of Basketry and Best of Division at the Idle-Jorg Museum, as well as the Idle-Jorg Purchase Award. So it is now in the permanent collections at the Idle-Jorg Museum of the American West. And this actually got to go and be featured in the memoriam site at Pulse in Orlando. So I got to go and visit the site, even though I didn't get to go with it. One of these pieces is currently at the Renwick as well. My self-portrait doll on the left there. This caused a lot of controversy in the online Wabanaki communities because it's a very female figure wearing a man's headdress for our people. On the right is actually my latest finished piece that I haven't even posted anywhere yet. That will be going to the Hood Museum of Art at Dartmouth College, my alma mater, and that piece is titled When Spirit Speaks. And it is meant to be a continuation of that piece and a representation of me aligning with the spirits that walk with me and listening to them and being guided by them. So that piece very much made herself. She told me what was going on her dress. She told me how to decorate the fan. And shout out to my pet ducks for dropping lots of miniature feathers that the exact proportion of eagle feathers. And now all the little people in the woods around me want their own fans, so I have to make them gifts. The last thing, and I've gone over a little bit, the last thing I wanted to talk about, the next move for me is I'm nudging my toes into the world of fashion. I have been modeling for quite some time and closet designing for years, and I finally started making some garments. On the left is a garment that I made out of scarves that were designed by Jamie Okuma, and on the right are two different outfits that are actually currently available for pre-order on my website from my first streetwear and athleisure line, which I've titled Fabanaki. And Nid-Dempsu, that's it. Thank you.
One in the middle?
We worked it all out.
Oh, we did? Okay.
Throwing it all out.
Just wait.
I don't think so. I think we just choose a spot.
Oh, wow, this is official. No, you haven't. You need it. Okay. We on? Woo! Yes. Well, thank you both so much for sharing your practice with us. I have a few questions here, and we're just kind of freewheeling it a bit. And then we will also turn the mic over to you guys, and someone should wave at me when we need to do that, because I've got a long list of questions here that we can start with. So first off, both of you were trained by women in your family, and I want to think through, how was the influence of your mother and your grandmother, how does that manifest in your work, and how has that influenced your trajectory as an artist?
My grandmother, I think, really influences a lot of the work that I do. We wove together for so many years, and for so many years when I was learning, I couldn't weave without her. And when I started to break away from my traditions, like by putting a bird on top of the basket, she would always be like, "Why?" Like, "For what?" Like, "I don't know, why do you put flowers on top of yours, Gran?" Like, "I put them on top of mine to hide that the center of my cover is crooked." Like, that's what... So she would always kind of question when I was doing something new. And it got to the point where if I was trying to do a pattern, I couldn't even let her see it until it was done, or work on it at her house, because every time I went to the bathroom, she would take it apart on me because she thought I made a mistake, or she didn't like how it was going. So, yeah. Yeah, if you made a mistake, Graham took your basket apart and made you start again. She also didn't tell you what the mistake was, just that you made one and that you had to start again. Yeah. So now I think that a lot of her pieces, a lot of her work is still like really visible in my work. The way she taught me is very visible, especially when I make what I'll call a more traditional piece. And now that I've started doing a few more traditional pieces and that my grandmother is no longer here with us physically, I will make, now I just call them like, oh, this is a Molly's berry. This is a Molly's flower top, meaning I wove it in her style instead of following my own artistic urges, which weren't always the same as hers.
So my mother brought me to this work. I'm the middle child, so I have that natural, like, you ask me to help with something, I'll help. And she kept saying, "You want to help me do this? You want to help me dye? You want to help me spin? You want to help me process cedar?" And I kept saying, "Sure, sure, sure," because that was really the only time that I could spend with her, because, baby gets lots of attention, oldest one gets lots of attention, middle child, help or don't be anything significant. Cool? So that was fun. Really thought I was going to be an actor, and was loving the acting life, but kept showing up when my mom was like, "I'm going to teach this class in Alaska, I'm going to do this workshop," and came to the weaving through the community and the human connection and the collaborative work, which is also creating theater, right? So I'm still creating theater, it just ends up being ceremonial regalia. We're just working on bigger things. And she is ever present in my work, in the things that I produce, in the ideas that I have. I feel like it's still her hands, her ideas, like coming through my fingers, which is beautiful and terrifying. I had to remove every single piece of work and her work from my home and other places, because when I sit at the loom, it is as if she's sitting here by me. We talk about the Chilkat dancing robe in progress as the veil between worlds, between our physical realm on this side and reaching to the other side of the robe. The closest, when you sit on the back side of a Chilkat robe in progress, it is the closest you can get to the spirit world without leaving your body. Or if you are a non-bodiless being, maybe you are just sitting on the other side of the loom while we're working.
That's beautiful. Thank you for that. I mean, thinking through the loom and thinking through what goes into the work, my next question is about the life of the materials you use. So when you turn to weaving or to basket making, where do those, the materials start? Do you think about the life that the tree led, or perhaps where the wool came from? How does that come through in your work?
Well, all of my work starts out in the woods or on the coast. I harvest all of the materials. I harvest the black ash log now myself, as well as picking the sweetgrass. Full disclaimer, I still will buy ash if I can from another basket maker when they have it ready. Like, absolutely. And if I see it and it's good quality, I'll take it home. But even then, I've just found that, like, other basket makers don't choose materials the way I will for the basket that I'm gonna make. So when I'm choosing a tree, like, I'm looking at all of the trees first. And even if I see one that looks perfect, like, the spirit of that tree may not want to become a basket. And it doesn't want to go home with me. And it doesn't matter if I think that one is going to be the perfect one, because it doesn't want to be a basket. So typically, I'll identify a few trees, but even as I'm going through, and even before I notch, a lot of the times the spirit of that tree will call out to me. And it will stand out to me in some way, and, like, it's going to be that one. Even if I check all of these, that one I'm going to notch, and it's going to have the perfect thickness of growth rings for what I want. And when I go to pick sweetgrass, I'm picking sweetgrass in the same spots that my family have picked, my ancestors have picked, where we've gone to keep that grass and make sure that it keeps growing. So even, like, with our materials, it starts from the very beginning, and it starts from the earth. And for us as Wabanaki people, our creation story says, I find it very interesting, because we acknowledge that we are younger than the rest of indigenous people on Turtle Island, that we showed up after, but that we were also created here, but we were created from the ash tree. And so when Galuskuk created us, the spirit of the tree was actually split in two by his arrow, and it became two different separate beings. And so he made a trade with them. He said, if you agree to take care of this place, I'll turn you into people. And the spirits promised. And so the first Wabanaki woman and Wabanaki man stepped out of the tree side by side. And after that, more women and more men kept coming in. As the strength of the spirits dwindled, children started coming out of the tree, smaller people. And at the very end of the line, there was just enough left of each spirit, where if they were put back together, they could make one last person. And so Galuskuk took the last piece of woman and the last piece of man and put them back together, and the first two spirit came out at the end of the line of people. So for us as Wabanaki people, it not only starts with the materials, everything for us started with those materials, because that's where we were created from.
Lily, what do you think? How does this relate to your practice, this idea of the life cycle of the materials?
I'll get to that part, but the start of the work is rooted in gratitude. That when we approach a tree to pull cedar bark from it, we put our hand to the roots of the tree, to the base of the tree, and we say thank you for the gift you're surrendering to us. What you share with us, we will make something beautiful from. And it starts with gratitude to our community, for the people who are going up into the mountains and gathering handfuls of mountain goat, or the hunters who are killing goats and bringing us hides, and then we roll them up as a community, and then we pull all the hair off as a community. And I'm saying this is like mountain goat is 100 years ago. We haven't made a mountain goat chilkat robe for 100 years. There's one raven's tail, which is geometric in the Northwest Coast, that has been made in the last 40 years, but a fully mountain goat chilkat dancing robe, you want to spend a couple hundred hours processing the merino and cedar bark that we're using for contemporary robes now, triple, quadruple that, and call all your aunties and best friends and all the whole mental health community to bring over and like process mountain goat with you, because you're going to spend 500 to 1,000 hours like getting the volume of hair, 7 hides that you need to weave a single robe. So it was not a one-person gig, and it was not a one afternoon or one weekend deal. It was like everybody's going to sit around and share story. And so it's not just gratitude, it's community, and it's a collaborative experience of creating lineage, creating artworks that are recording who we are as Native people, where we've been where we might want to go, the dreams that we have for our children. We're using merino wool these days because we can type it in, or 40 years ago we could make a phone call and say, hey, New Zealand, send us some more of that merino. Now we can be like, beep, 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 beep. There's no dial-up anymore, just beep, click it, buy it, send it to us. We're still spending hundreds of hours spinning the plant and animal together, which is that symbiotic relationship, the ecology of making of plant, animal, and human, and making work that lasts generations.
Gio, I want to return to something I asked you earlier. So while reading your bio, I noticed that you use the word basket maker and not basket weaver. Can you tell us about that a bit? Why is that term specific?
That was something that was actually decided upon specifically by the elder basket makers of the main tribes. And they decided that basket weavers only weave baskets, whereas a basket maker is involved in the entire process of gathering all of their materials, preparing their materials, and then making the basket from them. Whereas a basket weaver, we would see as only having the knowledge of how to weave. And without the other half of that, a part of it is lost. And it's something that is actually a problem now in our community, because lots of people want to learn how to weave. Not many people want to learn how to make the basket. And there was also a really big community aspect to basket making that is now lost. There was, once a time where the whole community would get together to gather the logs, to prepare them. The women would be working together, the children would be working together, like everybody would have these jobs and make sure that everybody got to go home with the basket that they needed at the end of the day. And so now the fact that basket makers have to do it all ourselves is pretty rare and pretty unusual for our tradition. But it is definitely getting harder, because I know I've had people ask, like, if I'll sell them some ash, and I'm like, I'm not going to spend 100 hours carrying a log out of the woods and pounding it with the blunt of an axe in a skirt for you to just come and buy it from me. Like, no, I'm going to make baskets from it. And like the exception of that is like when I know elders don't have ash or they don't have anyone to get it for them, that's when I just bring it to them and it's already fully prepared. But yeah, that was the difference, is that we do the whole process and we're doing so much more than just weaving the basket.
So I'm hearing something that it sounds common between you is that your communities came together to create these art forms. And I know you're both dedicated teachers to ensure that the next generation is able to carry forward these traditions. I'd love to hear from you, Lily, first about, what is your pedagogical approach? How do you go about teaching? How do you find students? How did your Zoom class come together? What's the whole process there?
I'm a lot more careful with who I teach these days. But, what is the phrase? Something like, something about the teacher will arrive, or the student will
find
hold
you,
the space,
maybe?
hold the space. The student, well, it's something about holding space and the student will come, right? I took on a few apprentices in the past who didn't weave outside of our time together. I didn't interview them and say, what do you do when we're not weaving together? And that student never went on to continue doing anything. There are students who come to me and they say, I took your pendant class and look, I wove this and this and this and this and this and this, and I spun this and I dyed this and I da-da-da-da. That's the student that I want, is the one who is teaching themselves to fish. They are tying their own flies. They are like trying out different rivers, right? They're doing all the things, right? And then they come to me and they're like, but I don't understand how to make a 90-degree corner at the bottom left. Will you show me that turn? So that's the people that I want to connect with, is the people who are trying it out, doing the sweat and tears, not spending 20 hours on Netflix unless they're spinning materials while they're binge watching something.
Gio, what about you? How do you find students, or how do students find you?
I think I find them very much the same way. It's more like I just have the space and those students will come to me. I get asked to teach basket making workshops and classes fairly often, and I generally turn them down. One, because it's a huge amount of materials, and even if I charge for the materials, I can't compensate what I would get if I made something out of those materials. And then it's always like a 2-day workshop. They never listen to me when I tell them how long it's going to take a basket. I'm like, no, we need like a minimum of 2 6-hour days. And it's like, well, we have 2 2-hour segments. I'm like, no, like you can make a flower, maybe. And I really see the benefit of having workshops where people can just come in and try it. I do, but I hate teaching those workshops.
Why?
Because I want students that want to be there. I want that same student that's going to go and take that initiative on their own and keep weaving. I don't want somebody who just thinks, oh, that looks fun, maybe I'll try it, maybe I won't like it. Like, you probably won't. Because it's not that fun.
So, I have the same exact problem that people come to me and say, we have 6 hours to do this thing. And I'm like, no. So I sent every single Native organization in Alaska in my region, I sent them all an email about a month ago. And I said, here's the thing. This is my hourly rate, this is my day rate, and minimum, you need me for 25 hours, and my students are gonna spin because I'm not doing this bull anymore, right? I'm not gonna do, 100 hours of material preparation for somebody to come in for the first 2 hours and then not show up for the rest of the workshop because it's too hard. I'm like, no. Show me, and like, I'm not teaching beginners anymore. I have taught enough students who want to go teach those like 6-hour workshops where somebody like weaves 4 rows and then they never do anything with it again. I don't have time for that. I want the teachers to come to me, or the students who are like passionate about it to come find me, and we can sit down for 60 hours, 100 hours, and there will be me when I'm no longer in these shoes, right? That is my goal now.
And I think the fastest way to weed someone out, whether they're going to be a basket maker or not, is to make them prepare the materials first.
That's right, baby.
Now, I say that being a spoiled grandchild who got to learn how to weave first, and then, but, I had the benefit of literally not having the muscle mass to actually split the ash at 4 years old. But that was pretty rare for me to be taught to weave and then taught the material process.
You want to go out in the woods with us for 3 days and pull cedar bark off of trees?
Absolutely.
You will not be able to like lift your arms above like your belly button, okay? Like pulling bark off of a tree is like, my 80-year-old mentor, Dolores Churchill, was like, I got up at 5 a.m. and I was like, what are you doing? Dolores, what are you doing? Oh my gosh. And she had the little like rubber band thingy, the little elastic band, and she was like doing this, like stretchy thing with both arms, like doing this, like wings. And I was like, what are you doing, Dolores? She's like, I'm preparing to pull bark today and tomorrow. And I was like, she's like, I have another one. Do you want to use the green one? I was like, I don't need that. I'm 27. This was so long ago. I'm not 27, okay? So I went up and pulled with her for the whole day, and yes, I was carrying like an 18-month-old baby on my front and still pulling bark off of trees, but it was unreal. Like, I literally could not move the next day. It was so painful. So yeah, find those people that want to go harvest bark with you and then teach them to weave.
Call me, I'll come anytime.
Yeah.
We'll have so much fun.
We have dates. We're gonna go on dates.
I think I see 10 minutes. I think we're about to open it up to questions, so thank you, everybody. I'm curious about, like, when you're staring at the blank canvas, or in your case, the materials, the processed materials, how do you get started with a new work? How do you not get intimidated and sort of do that artistic paralysis thing that many of us writers do? I certainly do. When I'm looking at a blank screen, I can't, it's a hard thing to overcome and get started. Do you guys feel that?
I have trouble finishing work. I can start a million projects, and then I'll have a million projects in progress for a very long time. For me, one, I usually see the whole piece in my head before I even start it, which was the opposite of what my grandmother would do. She would sit with her colors and her mold and just like let the basket tell her how to make it as she went. And every time I did that, I was not pleased with how the basket made itself.
I'm a Virgo, so I couldn't leave the decision making up to, yeah. So I was like, no, I'm deciding what you're gonna look like, and then I'm gonna execute it. And I loved it because basket making was the first art form where I could do that. Like I couldn't picture something in my head and then draw it without it being like a stick figure. Like I couldn't paint, my mind wasn't working that way. But I could picture a basket in my head and I could bring it to life. And when I'm feeling like I'm not inspired or I don't want to work, that's when I'll sit down and actually split some materials. Because as soon as I split and gauge all of those materials and they're all nice and shiny and I dip them in colors, I'm like, I'm ready. Like I'm ready to create. It's like, let's use it now. I just put all that hard work in.
What do you think?
I don't pick up materials unless I have that vision in mind of what it's going to become. I do feel like a lot of my work, and I keep doing this as if there's energy coming through me, right, and like coming through my fingers. And I'm not a Virgo, so I don't get that like crazy. I was going to say crazy, but that extra emphasis of like perfectionism. I let it become what it becomes with all of its flaws. There's a lot more flaws in my work than you want to see. Like, you know those spirit beads that bead workers use? There's so many spirit beads and like pizza sauce and stuff in my work.
I have spirit dog hair in my work.
Dog hair, that's a thing. Kitty cat hair, baby slobber, that's a thing. Babies are not babies anymore, but I feel like it's a relationship from not just the fibers and like my vision of what needs to come through. It's this like dance of I have this vision of this thing that needs to come to life, and then I have to surrender to what is trying to come through me, right? And when I try and force it and like, no, it has to curve just like this, that's when I'll spend 6 hours working on something and have to take it out the next day. I come back and I'm like, ugh, that was me trying to force my will. Like if there was a God energy or some sort of like universal consciousness, when I'm trying to force my will on the work, it's more imperfect than when I can just and make.
When I try to force it, I start breaking things.
Yeah, and swearing. When I start swearing, that's when I have to step away.
When you hear me say, I can fix it, I can fix it. No, it's time for Gio to go to bed. Mm-hmm. Put the work down and go to sleep. Mm-hmm. Come back in the morning.
So hard. Lily, can you tell us about an encounter you had tonight with your mother's art?
There's someone in the audience who has a button robe that my mother constructed in the 90s, 1999, 98. It was my favorite piece of work that she ever did in my whole knowledge of her work. And this person arrived with the work, and I fully broke down in tears. My favorite piece of work ever. And there's something about seeing her work that, yes, reminds me that she's dead, but also reminds me that she's not really gone. Yeah.
It was powerful to witness that encounter and think about how much life you've lived since then, how much you've transformed as an artist yourself, and just hearing you speak about the patterns and what your mother passed down to you. Can you speak a little bit about that? You know, the patterns she kept and the materials.
So my mom passed 7 years ago. And she left all of her finished artwork and all of her collected art from other people to my brother. She left this sweet house in Colorado, mostly paid off, to my sister, and she left me all of her yarns and buttons and wool, and the wool was stacked in like a little bit of purple, a little bit of variegated this, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and she like had already paired the wool to the applique fabric that she wanted to put on it. Not joking, 55,000 mother-of-pearl buttons, totes full of furs and deerskins and things. So, like, she left me the sticks and bricks to, like, buy my house at some point in the future, but I get to, like, build it brick by brick, really, or button by button, wool by wool. Part of that was she left this whole flat box of every single pattern she ever made of anything with joint copyright to me and my two siblings. So the three of us could replicate her work into perpetuity, right? With like 75, 80, 100, 200 different pieces of work that she may or may not have ever made. So there are like literal pounce wheel things. I don't know if you've ever seen someone make a piece of artwork and they have to like do the little pounce wheel where it's punching holes in the paper, and then you take baby powder and pounce the baby powder through the holy paper onto the wool or whatever the fiber is. And it's, I mean, some of it is like falling to pieces, like as you unfold it, the little perforated pieces are like wanting to be put back together, but what a legacy. So, sticks and bricks for my house. I'm the little pig who gets to build the brick house of the 3 little pigs.
Gio, tell me what it's like to see your grandmother's work.
My grandmother's death was still pretty recent, so it actually still catches me off guard when I see her pieces somewhere. So much of her work I learned so well that I even noticed when she started to change things in her older age and like do things a little bit differently than the way she always did. And then she would argue with me. And it's like, it's the most comforting punch to the gut you can receive. It's the only way I can describe it, because it's a sense of comfort, but it's still a lot of pain. But it's also really amazing because I think my grandmother was such a humble woman. She like didn't talk about when museums bought her work. So when I find it, it's like I'll walk into the museum at Bowdoin, or I'll walk into NMAI, and there's just my grandmother's basket. In fact, the reason I have a piece at NMAI is because my grandmother sold them one of my strawberries and didn't tell me. Oh. I didn't know that I had a piece in the National Museum of the American Indian until we started collecting pieces for this exhibit.
Oh my golly.
And the curators told me, oh, we're borrowing one of your pieces from NMAI. I was like, your what? I was like, I have a piece at NMAI? Like, since when? They were like, it says they bought it from your grandmother in 2013. She never said anything. Just like, oh, somebody bought your strawberry.
Wow,
thanks.
Grandma.
Like, here's the money for it. Thanks, Gram. Like, she's like, I sold it for you at the show. Awesome. Like, and then years later, it was like, you know, even when I saw it, I'm like, you know, why didn't you say anything? It was like her spirit showed up. She was like, you found out eventually.
You did find out.
I did.
So I'm getting waved at now. I think it's time to open it up to Q&A, and we've got some slips from the audience here. Thank you all. Oh, I should start with these ones. Wow, this is a good little stack here. Thank you. Okay, so the first one we were waiting for this. What are your thoughts on non-native people who work in your medium or practice? We thought this would come up, and here it is.
We talked about it in the planning Zoom. We
Yes.
thought this would come up. So, one thing that's unique about baskets is that every culture around the entire globe makes baskets. In some way, in some form, the materials always differ, the weaving styles always differs, but everybody, every culture makes some form of basket. And I think with Wabanaki basketry in particular, there have been several non-native artists who have learned our art, built entire careers off of that, and not even given us credit for teaching them. There has been one artist who literally copied Wabanaki acorns and became so famous for them that he was featured in Martha Stewart magazine. And now, like, his work is selling at a price point that very few Wabanaki people could ever hope to sell their work at. And it's the same craft, and he gets the attention and the fame from it for doing it, while native people who taught him still don't get that same recognition. So for me, when choosing students, like, I will not teach workshops for non-native adults. I won't. It's a hard line for me. I will teach workshops for non-native children because they are much more gifted at being able to receive without taking.
It's a good one.
And I think that children in general are better at that. They're better at receiving things without taking things. And I teach, when I can, I'll teach other Native people as much as they would want to learn. But as we already said, I don't like the informal, come try it if you like it. I want the student who already knows they like to make baskets. And so that's why, I know, my actual apprenticeship spots, even though they don't officially exist, those are reserved for Wabanaki people first, for people in my family first, and then other Native people that want to learn. Yeah.
I have taught 3 non-Native people to weave Chilkat ceremonial regalia. One of them donates her work to museums and foundations and educational institutions. She has essentially signed the non-written agreement that she will never sell Chilkat work because it is literally taking money and energy out of the Native community. She really loves it. She's a precise weaver. I enjoy her energy and her giving. She spun almost 1,000 yards for a community project that is in Juneau, Alaska, and just donated the spinning. That was, hundreds of hours of work. So she's energetically giving back to the community. I did teach a woman who wanted to go back to the East Coast and present both Navajo weaving styles, Chilkat weaving styles, and Ravenstail weaving styles as in some sort of fiber arts or textile arts presentation, or an open air market kind of deal. And she wanted to go to these textile guilds or these different places and share these 3 kinds of textiles. And I said, 40 years ago, that would have been fine. But today, I'm going to ask you please not to do that and represent Native peoples as if you are one, and just recognize what a gift it is for you to be welcomed into this space and weave this style, which is recording identity and history and story, just like totem poles or retaining story and history. This is a gift for you to enjoy and give to your family or hang on your wall, but this is not your place to sell and share as if you are one of us. The third one took the work and has, I would say she had a mental health crisis and started making very dark things come to life using Chilkat technique, and it rattled us. It rattled the few of us who were at the finishing workshop in February, and we internally within us, we were like, no more of this. Lily, you're not teaching non-Native peoples to weave Chilkat techniques. Not anymore. This was the wrong hands. And the work that this woman made was so dark and so you could reach into the depths of darkness and pull this really scary thing out, and that's not the spirits we're bringing to life.
She didn't know what spirit she was bringing through.
Correct. She was not being careful in her gratitude and the surrender to the work and the prayer and gratitude that goes into, and I say prayer, but it's not so much prayer of, dear God, help me, it's what a gift this is to weave. What a gift it is to participate in a universal creation of beingness. So, when the exception is a person who is married into the Native culture, has Native children or nieces or nephews that they want to weave regalia for, that will be danced in the community, in the culture, that's the one little squeaky spot where we can be like, are you showing up at parties? Are you contributing energetically? Are you harvesting materials with us? Are you making meals for people who are having new babies and having people pass on into the spirit realm? How are you contributing to the Native community?
Making food is a very
That's
important
right.
piece of that.
Cookies, hot cocoa, yes please.
Yeah, we can be bought with food.
That's right.
Good food.
Good food. Good food. Is this controversial, would you say? I feel like, that was one of the questions nested on this card is this stance controversial?
only for non-native people that want to practice our art.
Yes. Yes.
Controversial in an important way that challenges the public to, reckon with this reality.
I mean, there's even been one student who they have an Aboriginal crafts major at the University of New Brunswick, and so I went and met with them, and there was one of those students who came. We actually had a couple of students come and take a class with me and my grandmother. One of them is a Mi'kmaq woman who has taken her art to the entirely next level, like dream student, like taking everything me and my grandmother ever taught her. And the other one, anybody can take that major, but the non-native people are told, like, very clearly, this doesn't mean that you get to go and market yourself as an Aboriginal artist. It doesn't mean you get to go and just copy Aboriginal art and sell it that way. You can learn these techniques and make your own thing from it, but it doesn't give you permission to just practice Wabanaki art. And then we figured out that was one of the artists who went and literally copied our acorns, very specifically.
You look like you want to respond.
Oh, it was, I lost my train of thought, but it's in that same realm of taking the work and making it, and it's right now it's in a little nebulous space. It shouldn't be nebulous because the Native Arts and Crafts Act is up for revision, and we are having these conversations on the regular, once a week, within our Facebook communities, online, social media, all that. It's not okay to make Native art and sell it as Native art if you don't have a certificate of Indian blood from the federal government, which really sucks for the Native artists who don't have a certificate from their grandma, great-grandma to say, this is who I am. They're making art, they just can't prove that they're making Native art. Hawaiians too. It's a sad, sad thing.
One of the best moccasin makers I have ever met cannot even go and sell his work at market because according to the government, he doesn't have enough Indian blood to do that.
He's not a real Native.
According to the colonial structures that
That's
are
right.
slowly committing genocide in a different way. So that's something we all have to reckon with in the art world as natives who speak on behalf of community in a professional capacity, is that tough navigation of identity and who gets to decide that I'm Yurok. Is it me? Is it my tribe? Is it the government? So that's something we have to reckon with, and I think especially artists, as the face of your communities, a lot of times this is how people know your tribes. It comes with a really sort of heavy weight and responsibility.
I just want to thank you quickly for calling it what it is and using the proper word, which is genocide.
Yeah. So let's look at some of these other questions here. Gio, I have a fun one for you, is why do you model? What does it make you feel or see about the world, about yourself and your ancestors? Let's take it to a happy place.
I model. I model because I thought I could never possibly ever be a model. I thought I was too tall, too chubby, too hairy, too queer. All of the things that you don't see in fashion magazines or in editorials or on fashion designers' websites. And when I first got the chance, when somebody asked me to model for them, I said yes. And then they asked me again, and the first few times it was just the same designer. I was like, look at me doing this modeling thing. It's happening now. And then I took a chance one day and I messaged Jamie Okuma and I just asked her if I could walk for her. And she said, absolutely, I'll start a garment for you right now. And I think even the first time I walked for her, I was like, so I'm not saying you have to let me walk for you. I'm just saying I already have your entire line in my size if you did want me to walk for you. So that's how I got it. And then I found out that one of the designers had put my name on their list of models when all of the other designers saw who was modeling for who, and it actually started a fight among the designers because more than one designer wanted me to walk for them.
Oh,
And I definitely got shade from Jamie Okuma for walking for Lauren Goodday this year. I was like, well, Lauren had all white. I don't know what to tell you. And I didn't want to limit your creativity, but make me something white for next year and we can talk. And so now designers know that I can only wear white as part of my spiritual practice. And they're actually already planning all white garments for me for the next runway show in Santa Fe. So I model because I never thought I could model. And it makes me feel amazing when I do it. And it makes me feel so happy knowing that other young two-spirits in the audience see someone like themselves on that runway.
I have a question for both of you is how do you think about and experience the reception of your work by non-native audiences or people who are not a part of or familiar with the heritage, culture, and community from which the work emerges? So how do you consider those the non-native audiences?
My lifetime goal, which might not happen before I die, is to have Chilkat and Ravenstail textiles as visually recognizable as Navajo textiles, because everybody can look at a textile in the world and say, that one's Navajo, that's Peruvian, that's from Morocco. Who are the people that can say, that is a Chilkat dancing blanket? I know that those are still being made. Raise your hand if you knew about Chilkat weaving before this lecture.
Yay.
Oh, I love you guys.
So many. That's amazing.
Get a photograph of that. Are you serious? Thank you.
Working
Thanks for being
towards
here.
it.
Yay. Maybe everybody will raise their hand in 10 years. So amazing. Thank
Jill,
you.
what do you think? How do you consider that audience?
I mean, Native people don't buy my baskets, so I'm usually considering the non-Native artists. Native people come and see my work and ask who I think I am for charging that much for that piece. Yeah. It's odd because I think a lot of Native people experience this, that we get the most support from outside of our own community. And then in our own communities, that's where we get the most jealousy.
You look like you want to speak to that.
I mean, artists throughout the world, native and non-native, have been selling artwork to the people who have dollars or the house that they need or the new car or whatever it is that they're going to trade for the artwork, you know? And if there was a native person or community or institution who wanted to pay me a salary to produce work, I would probably accept it and let them have a couple pieces of whatever I produce, kind of like, you know, being a sponsor for Picasso or whomever else. Like, come and be my patron, and then you get first dibs after you've put in X number of dollars. Yeah, pay my bills for a year. Yeah, baby.
So we have two more questions here. I just want to make sure that Zoom, are there questions on the YouTube that I need to be watching for? Okay, we'll keep going. So is the emerald ash borer threatening your source material, Geo, and how is basket making adapting if so?
The emerald ash borer has been detected in Maine, as well as New Brunswick and Quebec, so all around us as well. I suspect that it would have been there a bit sooner, and that there were certain basket makers that maybe knew it was there and didn't say anything because they didn't want it to limit how much ash they could harvest.
And let's pause really quick. What is this animal?
The emerald ash borer is an invasive beetle that has come over from Asia and is decimating ash populations all across North America, and it attacks all species of ash trees. And the unfortunate thing is that other than basket makers, the only people who care about ash trees are baseball bat makers. So it is not seen as a huge environmental threat because paper companies don't see any value in ash. When we first heard about the emerald ash borer and the rate it was spreading at, I was told that we would not have ash trees in Maine by 2013. And it was only detected in Maine in the past few years. And we know that that is so directly related to the weavers of Maine working with the weavers in Michigan, getting their knowledge because they were completely decimated by the ash borer, and using it to try to slow the spread. So through quarantine efforts, through trapping efforts and monitoring, we've slowed it down. We've also been keeping seeds and growing seedlings because we noticed that it would only attack mature trees. And it would also only attack a stressed tree. So if it's detected in an area, you can girdle the bark of one tree almost as like a sacrificed tree, and they'll all flock to that tree instead of the healthy trees around it. So we've learned a lot about how this bug moves, how it and how it decimates the population, and how long it will take us to recover from it. So our plan is to brace ourselves, to keep the knowledge alive, to adapt however we need to, and to just make sure that if we ever do lose the ash tree, all of our grandchildren still have access to the seeds so that they can grow their own trees and bring all of that knowledge back.
I would hope this could be an intersectional effort between indigenous communities and baseball enthusiasts. Like, I mean, maybe Major League Baseball should be able to sponsor the saving of trees.
Most of them are aluminum now.
Oh, damn. Okay, well, it's so fascinating to hear about these conservation efforts and ways to keep these materials healthy and thriving. And my final question in the stack is, Lily, can you speak about pulling cedar bark a bit more? What goes into that?
Lots of muscle, yes?
I really like to learn how things are done. I like this old house and those kind of things. And so I'm just curious what you look for in a tree and how you prepare the bark. Is it like, do you hit it softly to break the fibers, that kind of stuff?
I'll
So
repeat
what
that.
do you, okay,
So,
good.
I'm trained. Disney trained me to be a speaker. Just kidding, just kidding.
Theater kids.
Theater kids, we're so weird. So the question was, how do you harvest the cedar bark? But like, what do you look for in the tree? Do you hammer it after, or smash it, or shred it? How do you get it to be workable for incorporation into Chilkat blanket making? So yes, we put our hand on the tree. One, we scan the tree line, right? Our cedar stands grow in many, and they're all connected in the roots, right? Just like mycelium, right? And mushrooms, they're all connected, so they're a family of their own. Yes.
See, that's why I can't harvest in the same spot every year, because all the trees tell each other and their bark gets thicker.
Correct. Yeah. So they talk to each other. There is a rule, like the tree has to be bigger than I can hug. Which, if Gio and I go harvesting cedar at the same time, I don't get to pull off the same trees that Gio does, because our wingspan is different, right? So benefit for me, because I get the littler ones. But also,
Cedar trees I gotta find.
yeah, I know. So starting at the base of the tree, we're going to say thank you, right? Gratitude. We're going to make a little hatchet, similar to how you do. Yes, we're going to make a horizontal line right down near the roots. Sometimes we'll pull the moss off a little bit, hatch it this way, and make a cut about like this, and no wider than this, right? Hang loose is our baseline. No wider than this on a tree that I can't touch my fingers around, right? Because if I go wider than this, I'm going to kill the tree. I don't want to rip its heart out. Just want a little bit of its like beautifulness. So that wide, we're going to make, using our fish knife, thank you very much, fishermen, we're going to use a fishing knife and make a cut this direction, up, maybe a few hang looses up, so that we can put our fingers into the little lip, little L shape that's created, and then pull. And usually it'll start pulling, and it'll be this wide, this wide, this way. It'll taper, taper, taper naturally. Sometimes you'll get 12 feet, sometimes 17 feet, somebody all the way up the tree. Here's the other part. We want to go uphill. We're harvesting on the uphill side, because did you know this about cedar trees? Their branches grow on the downhill side. If you try to pull cedar bark from the front side of a tree, like the downhill side of the tree, you're just going to get a tiny strip because there's too many branches sticking out and interrupting your beautiful pull. So on the uphill side, otherwise, you can also use gravity or reverse gravity. What is it? The elevation that you're getting. So you're grabbing this bark, you're walking backwards up the hillside, right? And you're pulling 12 feet, 17 feet, 30 feet. Sometimes it'll get stuck right at like where it's like just tapered off, but it hasn't let go yet. And you are grabbing this thing and swinging out to kind of like bend it this way and that way. You're like tree here, swing out this side, whee, and then come back up the hillside, swing out this side. So you're like basically breaking it off at the very top, and you're landing in moss usually, so that's really fun. But it's very sad when the tree says, "Nah, you don't get to keep this." Like, we want to shimmy up the tree and actually like let go. There was one strip where we were like, "No, it's just still on the tree. We can't get to go home. Who is going to climb the tree?" So there was one time we had to leave one hanging. We were like, "Oh gosh, we're coming back for that tomorrow." Yeah.
I'm just glad some of the problems I've had harvesting cedar are like common cedar harvester problems.
Critical thing though in the harvesting. We want to be in that realm of like end of April-ish to like middle of June. Like May is pretty sweet depending on how the winter was. And Pam cooking spray is critical. You spray your hands with Pam so that when you start touching the sappy bark, you're not completely, like you're sticking to everything afterwards, right? Pam. Yeah, baby. Pam. Not coconut oil. Pam. Yeah, no Vaseline. Oh my gosh. And then once you pull the yellow cedar off, there is a cambium layer, like a reddish layer between the outer bark and the inner bark. And my teacher, Dolores Churchill, asked me to take off that layer, like scrape it with the side of your knife while you are in the woods. So you leave as much of that fiber in the woods as possible, like giving it back. Then you bring it home, and once you have it back in your home and you're sitting around with Dolores, who did all of her exercises so her arms aren't sore, you take the bark and put it between your knees and split it this direction, like that, and then do that again and do it again until it's like the thinness that you actually want to make your basket out of. If you're doing yellow cedar basket making materials harvest. Otherwise, you can just take it, stick it in your crock pot for 3 days, change the water every 6 hours so the sap from that cooks up for like, it boils up, and it turns into shredded pulled pork cedar bark, right? So it just like cooks down to like these little shreds. It's beautiful because we want like Glide dental floss thin pieces. So cooking it for 3 days, changing the water 6 to 12 hours, the sap can just like flow over. We like to put our crock pot outside, pour hot boiling water over it so it overflows the sap into our gravel, not into your rose plants, not into your things that you actually want to live, because cedar sap is poisonous. Yay. That smell that we love so much from cedar is the thing that kills bugs. Yeah.
Wow.
Beautiful.
So interesting. So I saw that we just have a couple minutes left. One person requested on Zoom to be able to see the piece that Lily's mom made. We don't have to force the person to share, they say, but is that person open to sharing? Let's bring her up here, Renee. Or just a blanket, maybe someone in the front row. Thank you. I feel like you should take this.
Thank you, Renee. This is the piece of work that I loved most of my mother's work, and I was still a child. I wasn't even 21, couldn't even drink legally.
Can I help
This is called Having to Look Closely. And I don't know if you can tell, but one of the beings is kind of climbing up the back of the other being, 2 winged persons. And as Renee, who brought this, Renee brought this in, I said, I think I might have to modify this design and make it so that the one who's being climbed is actually reaching back and pulling her up. Because in all of my work, as I don't know if Gio feels this too, but the higher up that I go, and people are like, "You're so famous, you're a Smithsonian." I'm like, I'm not that famous. I'm just really fortunate to work in circles where there is goodness, and every time that I can, I'll reach back or reach over and pull someone up with me. So, yeah, I don't want to climb on the back of anyone. I just want you to rise with me. Come rise together. So thank you for bringing this up.
And I want to thank you all for coming out, and for those of you on Zoom for joining us. This was such a moving discussion. I feel like I know you both so much better now, and I appreciate your generosity, both with the work you've made and with the insights you've shared tonight. And I appreciate all of you and engaged listeners and good people asking questions. We're so grateful that you came. So thanks, everybody.
We'll stick around. You can talk to us in person.